what would you do if you had a job working for the federal government, and in order to keep your job, you had to be willing to change, dress, and actually be naked, potentially, in front of someone of the opposite biological sex, whether you liked it or not? Well, we're going to talk about this in a case that we're handling right now, and we're going to talk about this in the second half of the show with one of our attorneys from the Pacific Justice Institute. But the first half of the show, I want to interview someone who has a keen understanding of what's taking place here in the United States and the trends that are involved. We have with us right now in studio Don Stewart. Don Stewart is someone who is very gifted and talented in terms of apologetics. You went to Talbot.
Yes, I did.
School of Theology, which I highly recommend because they are premised upon the Word of God. And I can't say that of all seminaries today. But also you had a keen expertise in apologetics. You've also written many books. I know you co-wrote with Josh McDowell, Questions and Answers, I believe.
Yeah.
Which was a very widely distributed book. You have other books you've written. You also have your own program on his channel where you talk about news and events of the day. So, and you also have a Pastor's Perspective, another show. So I really appreciate the work you do there as well, addressing issues. So I want to sort of tap in, if we can, to some of your understanding of where we are as a nation as we are addressing these different issues. And for example, we have same-sex marriage in the United States. That was coming down the pipe, and yet we see that happening, and yet many people are wondering, where do we go from here? What is this? Is it going to stop here? I know for a fact that in the Supreme Court decision on this issue, they didn't stop with just gender-based discrimination, say, okay, this is protected under the Equal Protection Clause. They expanded it under substitute process to be a fundamental right for individual sexual fulfillment in relationships. And as far as I'm concerned, that's opening the barn door to all kinds of things that our nation could be facing in not 100 years from now, but possibly in just a few years from now.
Yeah, Brad, it's amazing how fast things have changed. Who would have believed it even 15 years ago, back when President Obama started out? Remember, he was against gay marriage.
Right.
And that's hard to believe.
He was a hate monger, I guess. If you listen to
exactly.
Southern Poverty Law Center, anyone has those views, they're a hate monger. And Hillary was a hate monger too, I guess.
Exactly. They all were, but how quickly things change. And now, like you said, the next step, the slippery slope, you've got polygamy. You've got all sorts of then horrific things, marrying, child marriage, this and that.
Right.
You go on and on. Where does it stop? And the problem is the so-called progressives, that was their plan. That is exactly what they're putting into practice. And thank God, at least it stopped for a while with President Trump. Now, what I've seen, and here's my worry, Brad, is that the absolute, I don't even know what adjective to use, how angry or basically people losing their marbles, just so intense hatred for those of us who hold the traditional values, because we have thrown a wrench into their plan. Because in just a few years, to think about it, President Obama came on, anti-gay marriage, so was Hillary Clinton by the end of his term. It's like, of course, everybody believes in this. And then you've got this new guy in the White House who's thrown things back. And the hatred, the anger, the lawlessness that's there, that's my concern.
Right. Lawlessness, as we've seen on university campuses.
Yeah.
I mean, university campuses used to be a place, Don, where it was the open marketplace of ideas. If there's one place where you're protected to be able to express yourself and have tolerance, it was university campuses.
Correct.
And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like with Berkeley and other universities across the country, it seems like they're becoming the most dangerous place when it comes to free thought and expression.
Yeah, they are, and it's really sad. In other words, it's almost like a pack mentality, a herd mentality. You have to, believe that we're all progressive here, we're all educated, we're all enlightened. And the truth is, Brad, they're all arrogant. It's what they are. They think they're smarter than anybody else, and this is where we're going with everything. And so, if you say you believe in traditional values, you're looked at as some kind of Neanderthal. And we've gone beyond that, and it's amazing in such a few years that's happened. But you're right. It's freedom of speech as long as you're free. You agree with me. Then of course you're a bigot, you're a homophobe, you're Islamophobe, and you name the phobes. We are, because we believe in traditional values, we believe in right and wrong. Right. And it's just it's a difficult situation. But it fits what the Bible has to say. Lawlessness will increase in the last days. Jesus said, "As it was in the days of Noah, shall it be in the days of this coming of the Son of Man."
And as in the days of Noah was a lot of sin.
Lawlessness.
Open rebellion against God and his righteousness, right?
Correct. Lawlessness and violence. And that's what one thing leads to another. Lawlessness always leads to violence. The Antifa group, we've seen that on campuses, and more and more people, when they try and stand up and speak. Nikki Haley just the other day, where was she at? She was doing a talk and shouted down by the University of Houston, I think it was, the people in the audience because they wouldn't let her talk.
This is the U.S. ambassador.
Correct.
Speaking, and she was booed down. She was...
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they didn't like what she had to say. Now, I learned a long time ago, someone said, when someone does something like that, they're so insecure, they know they can't win the argument. So the only way they can win is by booing or hissing or shutting the other person up, because it's not a sharing of ideas. It's not vigorously debating one versus another. It's like, no, it's been settled. We say it's been settled. That's it. And so that's what we see right now.
Right. And then we see organizations I alluded to earlier, Southern Poverty Law Center, where that's their goal, is to isolate, vilify, and destroy.
Yeah.
And they want to basically snuff out any discussion. If you have any discussion or ideas from a biblical worldview, then you're a hate group, you're a hate monger.
Yeah.
You need to be shut out and destroyed. I use the word destroyed, not loosely. That is the word they used,
of course,
to talk about their end game. And so it's extremely dangerous. And yet, you've got companies that are contributing to this organization. They have over $300 million sitting in their banks, millions of dollars sitting in offshore accounts. They're having a fun time making lots of money, bringing in lots of money, because the commodity they're selling to bring in this money is hatred, expanding hatred. And that hatred is what precipitates violence and violent acts like what happened to the Family Research Council not that long ago.
Yeah, in fact, it's glad you mentioned it. I was going to mention the exact same thing, because you've got that hatred that's there, and people listen to them. They believe they're credible because the major media gives them credibility, and they think, well, these guys are anti, everything, anti-progress. So the Family Research Council, other groups, I'm sure you're on the list, of course.
I'm on the list. Dr. Ben Carson's been hit. Dr. Dobson.
Yeah.
Franklin Graham.
Yeah.
Has been slammed. Anyone who proclaims the word of God unqualifiedly, unapologetically, is going to be on their list, if not now, then later.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah, and it is sad because they think they're ruling the roost, and unfortunately, the way the country's going, they're going to be given more and more credibility, more and more power, as it seems. And my fear, Brad, I'm sure you're fearing that too, is down the line when we get another administration in, which wants to make up for what's been lost during the Trump administration as progressive values, we will call it, they'll try and make up for lost time. Because you think how quickly we move. I mean, with a blink of an eye, how things changed in the 8 years of President Obama, particularly the gay marriage and so many other things. What happened to this country? It's like we weren't paying attention or what? And now what's assumed to be normal is everything you and I grew up with what's abnormal, anti-Christian, anti-biblical, anti-traditional, too, in this country.
Right, and it's increasing. Now, let me ask you this.
Sure.
Don, many people will say, let's just get a cabin up in Idaho and bunker down with our Bible, our bullets, and our bread, and that I see that creeping in, and it's a very defeatist attitude. What should we be doing? And I have a sermon I give to churches, 2 Timothy chapter 3 and 4, where it talks about in the last days, this is what's going to happen. And then it gives a blueprint of some things that we should be doing. It's the basic blueprint how we should respond. We shouldn't cower. We should respond. What's on your heart to share with the American people as to what we need to be doing as the body of Christ, constructively and cooperatively?
Yeah, what we don't do is go away. We don't hunker down. We don't, these preppers. We don't prepare for the doom and go and live in a cave, buy a bunch of freeze-dried food and that. No, one missionary said it this way, I think it's from the 19th century. He says, I want to plant my ministry 1 yard from hell. And that's where we're at in California. Let's face it, we're 1 yard from hell. We're here in the state, what's the sixth biggest economy now in the world, that is the trendsetter for the entire world.
Oh, yeah.
It's got the best and the worst right here in this state, but we have to stay here to keep it from, imploding, as it were.
Right.
So I always tell people this. Think of it this way. You're the only missionary that someone's going to see, the only Bible someone's going to read, you at work, because they're not going to come and hear me. They're not going to listen to you, Brad. They're going to watch you at work. And what a testimony you can have, the testimony of Christ, knowing what you believe, why you believe, living consistently with it, and then showing people that you're a human being too, that you're just normal.
Oh, yes. My wife will tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've been characterized, haven't we, as these abnormal people that are just so different from everybody else. And that's one of the things I love about Pacific Justice, what you folks do. You deal with normal people who just want to live a normal life, and they're told, no, a normal life is not the life you can live anymore.
Right.
We've got a new America here. And I'm sorry, as long as I'm alive, I'm going to go stick with God's word and try and promote the biblical truth, the biblical morality.
Right. And Don, the way you do it, I love it because there's not a sliver of hatred or attacking or guile coming out of you. It's love, it's compassion, and I tell people you cannot have true love and compassion absent truth.
Yep.
Because truth is what helps people. It's how it sets them free. It's what gives them victory, specifically the truth of the gospel and faith in Jesus Christ.
Yep.
And I really respect that tremendously in what you're doing and what you're accomplishing. I know we at Pacific Justice really try to have compassion and understanding as a part of our messaging as we move forward. At the same time, of course, being vigilant to protect those who couldn't have protection themselves.
Yeah, you stand up for truth, but you do it in a loving way. And that's what I love about PJI. What you folks do is do exactly that. You do it, but you do it in a loving, concerned manner. And look, the love of Jesus is what we share. We're not trying to beat somebody into submission. We're trying to tell them there's a God that loves you, that gives you the answer to the three basic questions of life. Who am I? Why am I here? What's going to happen to me when I die? And we're here to love you into the kingdom of God. Right. Now, we have convictions. We'll say what's right and what's wrong. But also, our desire is to bring you to Christ. Because, see, Brad, I was on the other side. I was one of these hate-filled, anti-Christian individuals. So I know how they feel. So I can see myself in them. So I don't, I can't condemn them because that's where I was one day.
Right. Now, Don, you just wrote a book. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've just actually finished a book called Living the Christian Life, which is basically about what a Christian's all about, how to live the life, how to, be a Christian in today's world.
Yeah.
Actually, I've written a number of books, and they're on
28 books.
28 right now are on the website. That's true. Either digitally or in print, but many more to come. So, yeah, I've got 28 right now available, dealing with prophecy, last days, the identity of Jesus Christ, 10 reasons to trust the Bible.
I've read that one. It's very good.
Thank you. So anyway, I'm blessed to be able to have those and do them, and more are coming.
Excellent. Once again, for the people to get a copy of that, they should go to educatingtheworld.com.
Educatingourworld.com.
Educatingourworld.com.
Yeah.
Educatingourworld.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So on June 7th, I went to pick up my daughter from kindergarten, and she ran up to me and said that her friend was no longer a boy, he was now a girl, and that he had a new girl name. Went home, asked my daughter about it. I looked up the book on YouTube. My daughter told me the name of the book. It was I Am Jazz. So we watched the book being read, and we found out that she had been taught what transgenderism is. He had come to school dressed as a boy. The teacher had read the book, and afterwards he went into the bathroom, which was in the classroom. He went into the bathroom, changed into a dress, and came out. He was then announced as his new girl name, and the class was told that he was now a girl. For my daughter, having that book read and then seeing her little friend that she had known since preschool go into a bathroom, change clothes, and come out, in her 5-year-old brain, she thought, oh my goodness, all I have to do to change into a boy is to change my clothes. My daughter was taking a bath, and she got up out of the water, and her hair was slicked back, and she saw a reflection of herself. And she started crying and shaking, and she was like, Mommy, I turned into a boy. I don't want to be a boy. And she was scared. She was really concerned about what she was wearing or how she looked. There were other kids in the class that were afraid that their blood could turn into boy blood. Another little boy went home, and his mom had to have the entire sex talk with him about body parts. It was very confusing. And again, the parents had no idea what had been taught in class. So they were all exposed to this highly controversial sexual topic without having any, without even thinking about their own sexuality yet. There were members of the LGBT community that were actually transgender that came up to us and said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that happened. and I stand with you, and I'm for parental rights. And that wasn't right what happened, and I'm so sorry that that got taught to them. And that to me was just so amazing, because the point of it was I was protecting my daughter and the other kids in that class, because they all have the right to be protected, all of them. And so it was actually really beautiful. I loved working with the Pacific Justice Institute because I felt like they had my same heart. It wasn't about like fear or judgment or anything. It was like, hey, let's like support you and help you through this, and let's fight for the rights for everybody. It was never about hate or anything, which made it super easy. I would totally recommend Pacific Justice Institute if you have something that happened at your school, if you have legal questions. Don't be afraid to stand up for what's right and to protect your kids.
When we heard about this situation at Rockland Academy, we got involved right away. We gave counsel to the parents on what the law did or didn't say, and we drafted a model policy for the charter school to adopt. Now, unfortunately, the school refused to apologize to the parents for their lack of communication, and they also refused to give a strong assurance to the parents that they would receive prior notice or that they would have the opportunity to opt their children out of similar circumstances in the future. If you ever have trouble with your school teaching your child something that you feel is not appropriate for your child, don't hesitate to give us a call or go to our website, pji.org. We're here to help. And folks, if you decide to support the Pacific Justice Institute on either a one-time or a monthly basis, we greatly appreciate that. We do all of our work without charge, both the big cases and the little cases, but we do that because of support from people out there like you. And we have wonderful resources on our website, pacificjustice.org. And an appreciation for people like you who support our work, take advantage of these resources. Included in these resources happens to be information on how to protect your children from Child Protective Services or social workers from wrongfully taking your children. It talks about 12 steps you can take to protect your children from being wrongfully taken, or your grandchildren from being taken wrongfully as well. It's a wonderful resource, and you'll find it helpful wherever you are in the United States to help give you some preemptive guidance and to be able to protect your children. We provide wonderful resources like that, and that's a sign of appreciation to you for becoming a part of the Pacific Justice Institute team. We'd love to help you. Once again, it's pacificjustice.org, pacificjustice.org. We have with us here in the second half of our show someone who I highly respect, who heads up our Orange County office, actually our Southern California office, Michael Peffer. Michael, you've been involved in a case for Pacific Justice Institute dealing with federal law enforcement. Now, when I think of federal law enforcement, I think of they're great people doing great things, but we've got a problem with one particular area of law enforcement that is trouncing upon individuals' rights to basic privacy and decency over their human body. Tell us about this.
That's right, Brad. And this is an area where PGI, we are sort of forging the law in this area because the law is not clear yet.
Right.
And so
this is a very groundbreaking case.
It really is. And we've got a female federal law enforcement officer who basically was told, and all the other females at the branch where this is, were told, look, you don't have any choice. This man who thinks he's a woman is going to be in your locker room. You don't have anything to say about it. He doesn't have to cover up. He can be belligerent, whatever he can call the tune here. And basically, the women have to just put up with it. That's what the employer said to our
and
client.
the employer, once again, is the government, the federal government, law enforcement. And this woman has complained about it. I think any woman would complain about this, to be told that she has to be willing to strip naked in front of a man, a 100% biological man, and be willing to put up with him stripping and taking off his clothes in front of her. In fact, I understand he's belligerent about it. He even said something along the lines of being willing to, when he's in the shower, he's not going to close the curtain.
That's right.
I mean,
That's right.
if that's correct, which we have evidence that it is correct, that just shows the degree of the intensity that we're dealing with here of someone who allegedly has gender identity dysphoria, but yet is someone who reportedly is a real threat to the decency and the visual violation of women in that locker room.
And it also points to, Brad, the fact that this employer, it's as if they don't care about the privacy of women. Here we as a society, we want women in these professions.
Yes.
And they're there and
They're working
she
hard,
is a
they're
good
competent.
employer. She's a good employee.
Right.
She's been there for a long time and she does her job, by all accounts, very well. But the problem is they just say basically you have to deal with it because we have decided for some political reason that we're not going to tell the individual with gender dysphoria that he has to be accommodated.
Right.
As opposed to everybody else has to give way to his accommodation.
Right.
And what's fascinating about this is, and we've recently been involved in the reasonable accommodation meetings, which, as our listeners might not know, but the government and other employers are responsible to try to make reasonable accommodations for people who have been discriminated against or who allege they've been discriminated against.
Right.
Which is our client. She believes that she's been discriminated against not only on the basis of her gender, but on the basis of her sincerely held religious beliefs.
Now, Michael, I want to touch on that too, because it's true, people of faith, Christian faith, Jewish faith, Muslim faith, in fact, I think just about every faith in the world, every major faith, every major religion, has something wrong with stripping and being naked in front of the opposite gender. I think that's pretty basic. And the fact that she has sincere beliefs and convictions about this, I think should be pretty easy to prove.
And we believe it's straightforward. Sometimes you get in cases and you're kind of like, okay, this is a wobbler. It could go either way. That's not this case.
Right.
Our client has a righteous claim for, at the minimum, accommodation. But
Right.
you know what's interesting? They bent over backwards to accommodate this man who's going to strip naked in a female locker room. But for her, they have dragged their feet for months. First, they waited months, and they don't have months to respond in the first place. And now we've been waiting for months for them to respond and give her an accommodation.
Wait a second, we were talking about for months, she's been having to dress and change in a locker room and shower. And at any time, this guy could just march right on in, show himself or look at her. This has been going on and on and on, and the federal government doesn't seem to care at all about decency, about someone being visually violated, about her privacy being violated, much less about her sincere religious beliefs and convictions, about it being wrong to expose yourself to be lewd in front of the other gender or for them to be lewd in front of you. I think this is deplorable, and I'm so glad, Michael, that we're defending this person. Where are we at right now in the process? What are we looking at? Because I know this is not just an easy, quick case to resolve. As you've already alluded to the fact that we've been taking this on now for weeks and weeks, months. Where are we at in this case?
Yeah, and I just want to be clear because our client, she decides she can't be in that locker room. So she changes in her truck out on the street.
In her truck?
That's correct. So she does not want to do this. She says, no, I will not do that. I will not go in there and pretend this fiction that he's a female. So
when she sees that he's physically, biologically is a male, 100% male.
yes.
This isn't someone who has a birth defect, a gender, some kind of adrenal birth defect that you guys. No. This is a man who is 100% man.
That's right.
He claims to have gender identity dysphoria, claims to feel like he's a female, and yet he is someone who, by his own probable desires, is probably turned on by women. Most transgenders, assuming he is telling the truth, most transgenders are, in fact, sexually turned on by the opposite biological sex.
Right.
And she's having to change and dress in her truck
Correct.
in order to try to protect some decency, some privacy. So what are we looking at here? This is a groundbreaking case.
That's right.
We're talking about the federal government. Where are we at? What's the time frame? What are we looking at here, Michael?
So we have two tracks going on right now, Brad. We have what we've talked about, the reasonable accommodation process, which we've been working at approximately 6 months.
6 months?
Yes,
Okay.
requesting and then them half-baked responding, but still our client does not have an accommodation. So she's still in the truck. The other part is the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission. That is, we have to take that step before we can file a lawsuit. Hopefully we don't have to file a lawsuit. Hopefully they come to their senses and they deal with this. But we are working with our client, doing the forms necessary, attending the meetings necessary to prosecute this EEOC claim. And then we're probably talking that process, at least the stage we're in right now, that process should end within the next 3 months, I would say.
Okay, good. And then we'll be able to file in federal court if we have to. Hopefully we won't have to. And then in federal court, it would then possibly go to the Circuit Court of Appeals and then possibly the United States Supreme Court. And folks, I want you to know that we at Pacific Justice Institute are willing to represent our clients all the way through the process, from the beginning administrative stages all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, if necessary. We do it completely without charge. We pick up all the costs, all the expenses. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of hours and lots of resources. And we're able to do that because of people out there like you that are willing to help us step up to the plate on behalf of people like this woman who simply wants her decency respected, like any other American. And this is a groundbreaking case, isn't it, Michael? So this case could be a determining case, maybe the determining case on protecting women in public facilities all across the United States from having to show their bodies or look at other opposite sex bodies in manners that are totally inappropriate and offensive. So folks, keep up with what we're doing. Go to our website, pacificjustice.org. Sign up to get our weekly press updates. I think you'll find them very important. Keep praying for our work. And just remember this, we need to stick together. We can't give up. So folks, there you have it. It's our God-given freedoms we're talking about. Now, let's choose to keep them. I'm Brad Dacus with the Pacific Justice Institute. Have a good weekend.